Hello YouTube, Shin Tiger Curl here, that dude in the straw hat, bringing you yet another awesome video. So, we're diving right back into the world of DevPro. So, I mentioned this in one of my, on, what was, CMJU's review of WrestleMania 22, that I was going to get back into DevPro recording, so here we are, and the the thing I'm going to do here is a pure build of one of the newest deck archetypes to be introduced into Yu-Gi-Oh! The infernoids. Now the infernoids are basically monsters that you can summon by either banishing them from your hand or your graveyard to special summon them. Now easily they can swarm the field. Now they had in the recent release of their of the structured of the next deck that's coming out. The Infernoid's got a lot of buffs and a lot of what do you call it? Support. I'm sorry, this is late at night, so I just decided to do this. So let's look over this deck right quick. We got 23. I'm doing a pure build now because I've played with this deck a lot, and I found that this is probably one of the few decks that you can run a pure build of, and it would still be very good. So let's go through it. We got one of the two boss monsters in the deck, in the main deck, Infernoid Onuchu. 8-star, 3,000 attack and defense. Can't be normal or special summon. Now, this is a theme for all the Infernoids, that they can't be normal or special summoned. So they have to be, you have to, like I said, remove them from play. Now, the bigger ones require at least between 2 and 3 removals, while the smaller ones only need like 1. So there's that. So this is one of the boss monsters, Infernoid Onuchu. Can only be summoned by banishing 3 Infernoid monsters from your hand or graveyard, whose total levels and ranks are all equal to all effect monsters you control are 8 or lower. So basically, if you bring this guy out, he will probably be the only Infernoid you'll be able to bring out. But there's another card for that, and I'll get to that later. His special ability, they all have have 2 abilities. One that's ingrained in them, and a second that requires a tribute, either of another monster or themselves. You can do one or the other. Now, his Onuchu's secondary ability is when he's special summoned, he pretty much nukes the field. He destroys all monsters on the field. Now, his secondary ability is once per turn during either player's turn. When a spell or trap card or effect is activated, you contribute 1 monster, negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. Now this is powerful effect. Not only does it nuke the field, but Onuchu also gives you that negation ability, so that whenever your opponent plays a monster effect, spell, or trap card, and it says it in the title, effect. So he doesn't necessarily have to activate it when in terms of a spell card. He doesn't need to flip it over or play it. If it's already on the field and its effect activates, you can use Onuchu's effect just to pop it and just get rid of it. I find this very useful. I run 2 of him. Next, we have Infernoid Lilith. Same as the first, requires banishing 3 Infernoid monsters from your grave or your hand, with the same summoning condition that all the other effect monsters have to be level 8 or lower. Her first effect, when she is special summoned, destroy all trap cards on the spell and trap cards on the field except void cards. I'll get to those when we get to spell and traps. And secondary effect, once per turn during either player's turn, when another effect monster effect is activated, you contribute 1 card, negate the activation. If you do, banish it. Now this is just pretty much Harpy's Feather Duster for your opponent's entire field. I found this can wreck a lot of strategies and a lot of adaptability. So this one can wipe out your opponent's monsters. This one can take out the traps. But you can't summon one or the other, but we can get around that with the spells and traps. So next up, Infernoid Antondel. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing these. His is similar, but only by banishing 2 Inferno monsters. Now, his first effect, when this card battles an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, it can make a second attack in a row. You can choose to activate this effect if you want to or not. Now, her secondary effect, Once during either player's turn, you contribute one monster and target one card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. You'll notice that all the other infernoids from here on out have the same effect at the bottom. This effect can kill a lot of decks, because a lot of decks rely on certain cards being in the graveyard. So like Fluffles can recycle cards from their graveyard, and this is a quick effect, so I've wrecked a lot of Fluffle decks with these particular effects, because it just banishes them and they won't have a target. I can either banish, it just says card, doesn't say monster, spell, or trap, doesn't specify, it just says card. So this is a very good effect. The first effect after summoning, you can attack twice. So, and I found this is a good way to clear monsters off the field, because I've attacked into one and destroyed it, and then get another attack. And it's a 2800 beater, so it's a pretty effective card. I run 3 of them. That may change in the near future. Next up, we have Infernoid Saitamas. I'm sorry. Same as the predecessor, 2 Infernoid monsters banished from the graveyard or hand. And its first effect, it's a unique effect. If this card attacks an opponent's monster, its effect can be activated at the end of that battle phase. Banish 1 card on the field once per turn, and similar, once per turn, tribute a card and banish it. This can get over a lot of shit, because there's a lot of things out there that are immune to destruction effects. This guy can banish them. The best way to get rid of monsters on the field now is to either banish them or bounce them. And banishing can be a lot more effective, because very few decks can actually take advantage of being banished, of having their monsters or cards banished. And it says 1 card on the field, so for those cards that are immune to trap effects that can't be destroyed, you can still banish them. I'm looking at you, trap monsters. You may be immune in certain builds. You may be immune to card destruction, but banishment is easy. 3 of them, of course. Next up, we have Infernoid Belphegor. Same as his other 2 brothers, needs 2 Infernoid monsters from the grave or the hand. Its unique effect, when this card declares an attack, you can have your opponent banish 1 card from their extra deck. This is a pretty okay effect. A lot of people have a lot of beefy spells, a lot of beefy extra decks. So this kind of gets rid of their options for them, because if they're a synchro or fusion or exceed heavy deck, it can just wreck their day. I've used this guy to just annihilate a person's extra deck, just remove whatever I want. And this is just when it declares an attack. It doesn't have to destroy anything. It doesn't have to win the battle. It doesn't even have to survive. All it needs to do is just say, I'm going to attack. Boom. One of your extra deck cards is gone. So I keep 3 of him. Next up, Infernoid Piede. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Now, this one, same as the first, banishing 2 Infernoids. Unique effect is that when this card inflicts battle damage by attacking an opponent's monster, you can send 1 random card to your opponent's hand to the graveyard. Now, this can be a good and a bad thing. Good in certain decks, that it kind of fucks with their hand, that it gets rid of a lot of their card advantage, which is good, but bad because certain decks benefit from having their cards sent to the graveyard. This card I've used to wreck Dark World decks, because it just says send them to the graveyard. Dark Worlds get their effect because of discarding cards. So this card is very good, but in decks against Shaddolls or any of the like that benefit from having their cards in the graveyard, this can come back to bite you in the ass, because some monsters get their effects just by being sent to the graveyard. So I only run 2 of him. Next up, we have Infernoid Petrulia. I believe I'm pronouncing it right. This is the low one we get into the lower rank monsters. You can summon it by banishing an Infernoid from your hand to the graveyard. Once per turn, you can target 1 spell or trap on the field, destroy it. And this card cannot attack the turn you activate it. This is good for just getting rid of the errant. This is good for MST or getting rid of those errant little spell cards or that annoying field spell that you just don't like, or popping those annoying pendulum monsters to keep your opponent from pendulum summoning. Sure, it sucks that he can't attack, but it's 1800. You're not going to be swinging much with him anyway. I just run 2. Next, we got Infernoid Hamadic. Inferno needs only 1 Infernoid to be banished. Once per turn, you can target 1 monster on the field, destroy it. This card cannot attack this turn. Now, like I said, in this metagame, a lot of cards have a lot of immunity to effect destruction. There's a few that run to mind. Belize is one of them, a level 8 dragon synchro monster that can't be destroyed by battle or by card effects. So this one really isn't that useful, but I tech one in just to be careful. This is the good card, but no more than one. You can run as many as you want in this deck. The deck is surprisingly fast with the support, so just keep this one in mind. Next up, Infernoid Antier. Like his other low-level brothers, he only needs 1 Infernoid to bring him out. Once per turn, you can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls. Return it to the hand. So this is, like I said, there are 2 in this game. In the game nowadays, destruction isn't the way to go. The best way to get rid of those annoying cards is to either bounce them or just destroy or just banish them. And this card is one worth getting into. So basically, if you're running into a card that believes, like I mentioned, he can't be destroyed by card effects, but he can still be bounced. So this is a good thing to tech in. I keep 2 of these. Next up, we have Infernoid Decatron. This one is a little different from the others. It's a tuner monster, but I don't really do any syncing with this deck. And unlike the others, it is the only Infernoid that can be normal summoned outright without needing to banish something. Its effect, though, makes it worth running at least 2. Now, if this card is normal special summon, you can send 1 Infernoid monster from your deck to the graveyard, except Infernoid Decatron. And if you do, this card gains levels equal to that monster, its name becomes that monster's name, and it replaces the effect of that monster's original effect. This is key, replacing the effect. Now, what was it? I played a duel some time ago, and I played a duel some time ago, and a guy played Vanity's Emptiness. It's a trap card. As long as it's on the field, neither player can special summon. Special summoning is key in the metagame, so this kind of fucked with me. So I had all of these guys in the graveyard. I could have summoned them by banishing them, but Vanity's Emptiness fucked me up. This saved my life. Why? Because I either sent this guy, or I either sent this guy or this guy. One of these 2. I remember. Yeah, it was this guy, because his secondary effect is target a spell or trap card on the field, pop it. Now, using that effect, using Decatron, I summoned Decatron, then I sent Patera to the graveyard with his effect. He gained his effect. I popped one of his back row, which inevitably destroyed Vanity's Emptiness, because if a card is sent from your opponent's side of the field to the graveyard, it automatically pops, so that's 2 for 1. Then I summoned my big monsters and utterly ruined his day. Decatron in this deck can save your ass just when you need it. Sure, it's 500 attack and 200 defense. You ain't gonna be attacking with him anytime soon, but he can save your ass. And finally, we have Infernoid Cytine. You can summon it by banishing a 1 Infernoid. Once per turn, you can target a set card on the field, shuffle it into the deck. That target cannot be activated in response to this target's activation. Now, I only run one of these because I may run another one, but I've never run into a situation where I really needed to use his bouncing effect, so there's that. So I may run more of him. The deck can run with more monsters than it really needs to, but for now, I'll just keep him at 1. So that's 23 monsters. Now, I know I normally go 20 monsters, and I said running over 20 monsters is effective, but thanks to the support that this archetype has, This is not, all 23 of these monsters are not a problem. Now we go to the support. These are the void cards. Now you remember seeing this when Lilith said destroy all spell and trap cards except void cards. These are what she's referring to. These are all void cards because they have void in their name. Now first up we have Void Seer, a quick play spell card. Target one infernoid monster you control. That target is unaffected by your opponent's card effects this turn. If an infernoid monster you control will be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card and instead of destroying one of those monsters. These can save your life with an infernoid deck because you can play it from your hand, or you can just set it on the field and hope your opponent plays something. If your opponent plays Snatch Steal, Void Seer, when it says unaffected by your opponent's card effects this turn, meaning that anything that your opponent plays that turn that could possibly affect you will not. So I've used him on Lilith and Onichu, especially Onichu, because they think, oh, I'm just going to play Heavy Storm. Nope, Void Seer. You can't do shit to him. So you just got to run him over. And doubtful you're going to run him over with 3,000 attack. Or Snatch Steal, I'm just going to steal it and make it mine. Nope. Void Seer, you can't do shit to him. I've even killed the fucking Quillpuff Killer, that fucking bastard, and it was just awesome to see them run to die like that. And like I said, the second part of that secondary effect, it's also saved me, because while this is in the graveyard, even if they MST it and send it to the graveyard, it's still live. So if you attack, this is in the graveyard, and you run into a mirror force or a dimension prison or a bottomless trap hole, just banish this sucker. It won't touch him. Well, better yet, dimension prison could still get it since it's a banishing. But its first effect could protect it from anything your opponent can throw at it. So if you have this guy on the field with this, you pretty much they can't touch you for a while. So there's that. Next up, we have Frozen Void, recently added. It's a continuous spell card effect. You can discard one card, add a void spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, except Frozen Void or Null and Void. But you cannot special summon or normal summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Infernoids. You can only use this effect of Frozen Void once per turn. If an Infernoid monster you battles your opponent's monster after damage calculation, you can send this face-up card to the field to the graveyard, banish them both, battling monsters. This is a key card. You need 3 of these. Your void cards are what keep this deck running. This pretty much can make your deck faster. Not only it allows you to ditch your higher level Infernoids to the graveyard so you can summon them later, but it lets you search out your void cards, like your Void Seer or any of your other void cards, and then just put on more field establishment. This thins your deck out a little bit, makes your deck faster, and you'll be drawing the cards you need. And its secondary effect, I haven't used it yet, but I can see where it's coming from. If your opponent does find a way to get over this by battle, then you can just banish it and the other monster and just banish them. And sure enough, these cards are not hurt by being banished, and I'll get to that later. Next up, we have Void Dream, another permanent, continuous spell card. Now listen carefully. All Infernoid monsters you control with an original level of 2 or higher become level 1. Also, battle damage they inflict to your opponent is halved. You can send this face-up card to the graveyard to fusion summon one Infernoid fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or deck or your side of the field as fusion material. If your opponent controls monster or monsters that was special summoned from the extra deck while you don't, you can use up to 6 monsters from your deck as fusion material. This card is very, very key for a lot of reasons. For one, since it turns all your bigger, high-level monsters into one, you can pretty much summon, if you have a lot of them in your graveyard, you can go crazy and summon a lot of them. I have used, thanks to this card, I can summon this guy, this chick, and this guy, so I can nuke. So I summon him first, nuke the field. Summon her first, nuke his back row. Summon him, if I wanted to, If, or better yet, summon him if I wanted to. If anything survived, banish something. If I summon him, banish to fuck up with his extra deck, and so on and so forth. So that's good. Even though the battle damage isn't halved, it more than makes up for it, since you'll be swinging with a lot of 2,000 plus beaters, so the damage is going to rack up. The second effect is to fusion summon their new boss monster. And I've had opponents who swarm the field with fusions or exceeds or synchros. I play Void Dream, I completely ruin his day because the fusion monster does the job. I'll get to her soon. So yeah. Next up, we have a field spell, Void Expansion, the first of the support cards to come out with the first gen of the infernoids. During your standby phase, you can special summon one infernoid token, Fiend type Fire, level 1, attack and defense 0. To special summon an infernoid monster using its own procedure, you can banish infernoid monsters you control instead of those in the graveyard, or a combination of both. Your infernoid cannot target infernoid monsters you control for attacks or card effects except the infernoid with the highest attack, with the highest level. Now, I know a lot of infernoid players don't really see the point in this card, but I can see the potential in it. The infernoid tokens can be used to substitute for infernoid monsters in case you're running low on them in the graveyard or your hand. You can just use the tokens. Not only that, they provide you with that little extra defense and an excellent tribute fodder for the bigger monsters' effects. So you can just use them instead of you can use the tokens instead of using your actual monsters, which keeps field advantage and fucks with your opponent. And even when they're on the field, if you have a higher level monster, any one of these, they can't target those tokens for attacks or card effects. So yeah, it's good to have these around 3. Here we have Miracle Dig. Not exactly pure, but I find this one useful. Miracle Dig, spell card. If 5 or more of your monsters are currently removed from play, return 3 of them to the graveyard. I run 2. These are godsends. This is an old card from like before the ban lists, like during those days. This is now the reason why I run this over Burial from a Different Dimension, because Burial is limited to 1, and this one is unlimited. That might change in the near future, but these are the kind of cards that you want to run. So yeah, you want to have at least 2 of these. Now we move on to the traps. Eye of the Void. Regular trap card, special summon 1 infernoid monster from your hand, ignoring the summon conditions, but its effects are negated until the end of the turn. Basically, you can pretty much summon any one of these motherfuckers from your hand. Their effects would be negated for that turn, but it's a good way to just swarm the field and put some more pressure on your opponent. And I run 3 of these. Next, Rising Void. If you control a monster that's not an infernoid monster, send this card to the graveyard. You can only use one of these effects of Rising Void once per turn. During each of your opponent's standby phases, you can target 1 infernoid monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. During each of your standby phases, you can target 1 of your banished infernoids monsters, return it to the graveyard. This is fucking awesome. Why is this? Because during your opponent, you can play this during your opponent's standby phase, and you can bring back any destroyed infernoids back to your hand, because these guys live to be in the graveyard. But his secondary effect during your standby phase, you're going to be banishing a lot, and this card helps you kind of recycle back in those monsters that you banished, and you can re-banish them again, or get back your Onocho that got banished for another monster's effect, or your another Lilith and bust her out. And since she says she busts anything that's not a void card, all of these are safe. So you don't have to worry about accidentally blowing up your own cards. And finally, we have Void Launch. During each of your standby phases, you can send up to 2 infernoid monsters you control to your deck to the graveyard. If you control a monster that is not an infernoid, send this card to the graveyard. Now, originally, a lot of people didn't want to play with this, but with the new support, this has found some new life. Because this is pretty much a premature burial without needing premature burial. Because, as you know, like burial from a different dimension, Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is limited to one, and you can only send one card. During each of your standby phases, you can just send 2 infernoids to your graveyard from your deck. This card fills up your graveyard fast, and you will have so much tribute fodder to summon your big bastards that you wouldn't even know what to send. You could just adapt your strategy to whatever the situation calls for. So these guys are just beastly. Your best bet when you're using this card, send the higher ones first. Anything over level 4, send them to the graveyard. These are the ones you want to be using. These are the ones you want in the graveyard because because the bigger ones can be summoned from the graveyard. You don't need to have them in your hand. So once they're in the graveyard, you can summon them whenever you want. You can still summon them from the hand, but it's preferably in the graveyard. So this is where this comes in. And thanks to this, any infernoids that you just want to happen to your hand. So remember that combo I talked about with Decatron and this guy? Well, when he played it, I used Void Launch to send him to the graveyard. Dude's next turn, I used Rising Void, bring him back to my hand. My next turn, I summoned him, sent him to the graveyard, popped his back row, and then it was on from there. So yeah, these guys make the deck go. And finally, we have the new boss monster, Infernoid Tierra. I think it's a level 11 Fiend Fire, 3400 attack, 3600 defense. Fusion materials, Infernoid Onichu and Lilith, plus 1 or more Infernoid monsters. When this card is fusion summoned, you can apply this effect. You activate this effect. Apply as many effects as possible based on the number of fusion material monsters with different names used for its fusion summoning and resolve in sequence. So, 3 or more monsters. Each player sends 3 cards from their extra deck to the graveyard. 5 or more monsters. Each player sends the top 3 cards of their deck to the graveyard. 8 or more monsters. Each player returns up to, I think, what was that? I can't read it, but up to, I think, 2 of their banished cards to their graveyard. 10 or more monsters. Each player sends their entire hand to the graveyard. I have fucked people's days up with Tierra because it's so easy to bring out. Because a lot of people run friggin' run cards from the extra deck. This is where Void Dream comes in. You can just if they have a monster from the extra deck, use this bad boy. Just send these 2 and whatever else you want to the graveyard and resolve their effects, and all of them help. With 3 or more, you can send 3 of their monsters to the extra deck to the graveyard, especially if this kills Exceeds decks, because, well, you can't really special summon them from Exceeds or fusion monsters. They're dead on arrival. And 5 or more, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. This doesn't hurt you a bit because your monsters like to be in the graveyard. And it just keeps getting better. It's a 3400 beater. And even if it gets killed, you can just use it for tribute fodder for one of your other infernoids. So there's that. So this is my pure infernoid deck. Now, as you can see, I don't run any other monsters other than infernoids, and the deck runs great. I have won at least 75 to 80% of the time against varying other decks when it's running at an optimal pace. It is just ridiculous how fast this deck can go. Because with Void Launch, you're constantly sending monsters to the graveyard, which thins your deck out, and not only are you picking up the lower level monsters that you need, but you're also getting the spell cards that you need. So this is the reason why I don't run terraforming, because the way the deck works is just so fast. It keeps moving, and thanks to Frozen Void, I can just keep searching for my Void cards, whatever I need. I can just pitch if I want to fusion summon, pitch something, get Void Dream. If I want to get my field spell up, pitch something, Void expansion. If I want to get back some of my banished cards, pitch something, Rising Void. If I just want to keep my monsters from being destroyed or being affected by my opponent's monsters, pitch something, Void Seer. So yeah, this is aside from the Miracle Dig, this is a pure build of this deck. And so my next video, I will be showcasing just how good this damn deck is. So, I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you see, link, comment, subscribe below. Got any questions or comments? Leave them in the comments. I'll get to you below. Make sure you click those advertisements. They help a lot. And make sure you try to support me with my tip jar. Donate if you want. Donate what you can. So until the next time, this is Shintai Curl, that dude in the straw hat, saying good night and game on.